I'm looking for what I see on the surface that may tell me, hey, there's, some strong current over here, or there must be some rock underneath here because we're going to get pulled around, and not to fight that, to understand it and respect it.
I'm here with Lauri Nemetz, and it's great to have Lauri on here. We've known each other for quite some time, but we've been aware of each other, I think, for many, many years before we actually met in person. And Lauri's been is part of the Anatomy Trains faculty. So we both have commonalities there. It's just that we weren't together at the same time with that, but somehow through various spheres of influence and communications that have been out there through social media, we've kind of linked up, and then Lauri and I really kind of got together when we were on the Fascial Net Plastination project, and just really spent a lot of time, chatting and working with each other. And I know Lauri's got lots and lots of skills in the dissection lab. I've seen them firsthand as well, and so she's been such a valuable sort of team member within the Fascial project. But Lauri does lots and lots of work with Tom Meyer's dissection team as well. So I'm I'm really sort of itching to hear more about that as well. But Lauri, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here virtually, as we are.
So, yeah, virtually. I mean, our whole life has been living like this. It's been quite strange, sort of looking into the screen all the time. Can't wait for us to all be back together, because we've all spent so much time being in this environment in Germany. To not be around each other anymore has been quite a strange thing, because we would all be out there through this period of time right now, I think.
Indeed. In fact, I think I was estimated to be out there for 9 weeks this summer, and at least in Europe, as well as the project. And of course, like most of us, our plans for travel have changed quite a bit. Just again, obviously what it is. In fact, my very last major trip was that last time we got together in Germany in January. So it has, I had all sorts of things on the book for the spring, which obviously got changed. So, I've been huddling here in New York for quite some time now.
So you're involved with Pace University, is that right?
That is correct. I've been there for close to 20 years, not quite there yet. As an adjunct associate professor, been there a very, very long time. And I teach there. I teach actually the yoga academic courses, both a regular and an advanced course. We root it in academics, as well as almost all the non-credit classes on the Pace Pleasantville campus. And then I also teach a myofascial anatomy for sports and movement class every kind of third semester, and guest in the honors department. Both I've guested in psychology, which is part of my background, as well as kind of creative courses. So
okay, so well, let's sort of start maybe at the beginning, and then we'll kind of go into what you're doing, and that's be really interesting.
Where were you born?
Yeah, where were you born? Yes. How much did you weigh when you were born? Because we're also both sort of trained in the Anatomy Trains process as well. We both apply that within our movement practices, and our commonalities also go across the yoga world. But what kind of got you started on this whole route? Where did you, what got you interested in the body? What got you interested in doing what you do?
Gosh, let's see. First of all, I was born in the Midwest. I sound very East Coast, and I've been rooted in New York more or less for a long time. But I did come out of the Midwest way a long time ago. I've always had almost this equal interest in the arts world, the heavy duty academic world, and coming into dance movement and every other aspect you can think of. I didn't have a lot of opportunity when I was younger to take, dance classes or what have you. So I created my own opportunity. I actually, it's been kind of the story of my life is when there haven't been finances, find a way to create them for yourself. But it moves and drives one towards the things they want to do. I was house manager of theaters one summer, even when I was in college for the American Dance Festival. And just that was an exposure to just tons of great movement. And I never went the regular route. I mean, luckily I, was supported along the way that way, but I really forged a path of the atraditional. My undergraduate degrees were in art history and French. I think my dad wished I was going to go for something practical. I didn't go for the full scholarship. I went for the partial scholarship and work study and everything else in this very crazy non-linear pathway. And always did artwork for a long time. So that's been in my blood work and everything else. And when it was time, I wanted to go to graduate school, I was equally going, do I go to art conservation? Because I had taken some courses both at Harvard and the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, or do I do dance movement therapy, which was another big interest of mine, which felt really juicy of, combining movement for wellness in a different way. And I went the route of a dance movement therapist, at least initially. So I spent, 2 solid, almost 3 decades as a dance movement therapist. I still retain my license and have worked tons and tons of different populations. But I think that also brought me more into the anatomy world, because we had anatomy, we had different basic things we were required to take, but it was, I would have to say, not as complete as I needed it to be. And likewise, around that same time, I dove into the yoga world for the first time, Pilates, other things too. And things would be scratched on the surface. And I was like, but that doesn't explain this person I'm seeing. Both clients, as far as therapeutic clients, everything from trauma to special needs, populations to whatever, to, again, some of my yoga students that just didn't fit the mold. And I'd be like, what's going on? This does not look like the book. So I think that, kind of dove me into this deep dive into anatomy. And I found Tom's work actually right around time of, he was writing his, I guess, first book, maybe it just had come out. He did a course in New York City for movement professionals. So I have, a lot of people don't know this, I've come to the route of being faculty for him only through movement, not a structural integrator. It's one skill set I will back off and let other people take a hold of. But I took a deep dive in, and I wanted to know more. And I think when I found or had the suggestion for dissection, I was really interested in seeing what I could see, and was sensitive to that. But then I got that fascination, which, just takes over. And I found, you well know this too, coming out of an artistic bent, that it is about, there's an artistic choice, in dissection work. And not only what the body reveals to you, I always tell students a lot, it's like a seashell. Person's no longer there, but you see how they live their life and the kind of circles of their life in there. But how you choose to reveal that is actually artistic, as well as we all know, we disrupt something in order to reveal something else. So, from a long time, there were many of us in different worlds too, who really wanted this view of fascia in a different sense. And part of the reason I dove into ghost organs and everything else, but it's an interesting process to reveal a different viewpoint. And
I do find that, I mean, that's great that you say that. I mean, and I think that's where, we have that lovely meeting of our minds when we're in the lab as well, because the whole process of what we've currently been going through is such an artistic process. And thank God that this has been the case with this particular form, to
Yeah.
to be also in an environment where they have been displayed artistically. I mean, originally when Body Worlds was going to appear in the UK the first time round, it was called Anatomy Art,
Ah,
and
that's right.
it
Yep.
wasn't allowed. They changed the name; it got closed down because of that. So then Body Worlds became the theme. But to me, it is really the artistry of producing dissection anyway is artwork, one way
Absolutely.
or another. But how this happened with what we see with Von Hagen's work, and then that's allowed us to really get creative, to create what we've been able to create with our form that's going to be presented at some point in 2021. But yeah, so I mean, that's really refreshing to hear. I love that, and it's a good reminder to me, because once we're in the lab, we're all together and our brains kind of meld as one. But to step back like this and then do this, even though we've had so much social time in that environment, it's good just to step back and go right back to the beginning of what's happening with the artistry of it. And in my mind, the scalpel or the tools become like a brush.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, hats off to the people that have gone before me and that I've learned from. Particularly Gil Hedley was my deep dive in initially, for years and years and years. Would come back and play around, and he would let me do these crazy layered dissections and put everything back and have kind of creative playtime. I went to Mount Sinai too for pro dissection learning and work to see another viewpoint. And then obviously we work with anatomy trains with Todd Garcia's lab. And literally that is where I think my skill set really got refined. And I did see that, again, you're using tension in one hand, but the lightest stroke in the other. And there's something so satisfying and respectful, reverent about actually doing a good dissection. I think that's something, hats off to your design with Freya, with everybody who's contributed in there. And then there's a piece for me both to honor her, this form that we're working on, as well as just in general to share that it's a form of kind of respect to do a nice job. I think that's something those of us who work a lot in dissection lab take pride in, because we want to reveal something both as a nod to who's donated their body for this process, as well as to educate, to reveal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a remarkable honor to be in that situation as well, and to do the best, for what we've been left in that respect. So actually, let's just go to the ghost heart then, because I mean, this is something that really just exploded, I think, for you as well. Being able to do that and produce that, and this is something that I think we can do in the future with you.
Yeah.
For the project. But what had you, where did you start with that? What had you start that process?
Actually, what inspired me, Tom was talking in one of his lectures, he uses this image a lot. Jeffrey Lind had mathematically taken an image from, national whatever medicine. I don't want to misquote the actual original image, but he had taken this thigh that was muscular, but with that fascia in between, and he removed what was muscle tissue electronically to create this image that was a fascial atlas image, and something that people like Carlos Stecco now created, fascial atlases. But I was really fascinated by this, and I know Tom kept saying, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could magically dip something in a solution and then be able to get this sort of ghost image? And then Doris Taylor and her lab actually were doing these ghost hearts. And they're still working on this process to be able to, again, have the extracellular matrix be the remainder scaffolding, is kind of the way I talk about it, and to be able to reseed that with healthy cells so that can be put back in a body and there's less chance for rejection. Because anybody knows somebody with an artificial heart or something, they have to take medication usually for the rest of their life. There's a strong chance all of that could be rejected. So I became fascinated. I'm not going to, do this for the medical world. And I also am very interested in doing things cheaply because that's been the story of my life. So I was like, how can I translate some of this process? Because I had read, she used something like, again, basically shampoo, sodium lauryl sulfate, to wash away some of the fat. And so I took some of the papers and also noticed what other people had done out there kind of inexpensively that would have that effect on, a heart, and eventually I did a kidney as well. I did many hearts over a short period of time, so that would, through a process, strip away everything that was cellular, but leave behind that scaffolding of the extracellular matrix. And I wanted to do this as a teaching model, like, wow, look how much of something is not muscle tissue or blood or something else that we normally envision, especially with the organs. And they're a little hardier. Again, a lot of our areas of fascia are very fine. The techniques, are a little bit rough, but I'm taking things like salt and water baths. And again, the shampoo, I used the harshest shampoo I could find in the cheap end of the supermarket, and that worked well. And some other things in there too. And did do this as a poster too, in a presentation later for experimental biology, writing up my formula for all of this too, just to talk about the process of how this worked. And it's definitely interesting, because then you are left behind with this scaffolding that shows the fascial structure, not the other way. And it's that perception change that we've gone from, we're always looking usually at muscle, at blood, at whatever, all these other things, but to shift that away and look at either the extracellular matrix, the fascia in general, isn't like, aha. So I did it. The last time I did do this process was with a kidney. And, kidney is full of all this blood and all this tissue, but when it became decellularized, it became floppy. If you took it out of any solution, you put it back in water, the shape again of the kidney came back. And it was almost like a sea sponge or something. Just to have that amazing structure in there was astounding. So again, I just was fascinated with how do we do this on a larger level. And I think I know Tom had written letters, you had written letters, Robert Schleif had written letters over the years. I'd seen some of the Plastinarium people at various events, and none of us on our own could have that momentum that all of us together had to actually have the Plastinarium perk up and say, well, yeah, let's do something on a larger scale and see what happens. So yeah. It's a little bit of that.
That's brilliant. No, that's amazing, and it will be great. I think it's going to be possible that will be something that could be presented through, excuse me, our process that we're going through right now. I know we've spoken about this, and we know that there's a few possible obstacles to that happening a certain way, so we might have to adapt the process, but I'm sure it can be done. Your interaction then with anatomy trains, how did you see then its relevance in terms of movement? I'm interested in that, because it hit me the moment I came across it, because I was coming from a movement background as well. But it would be interesting to hear that from your perspective.
Well, I'm currently writing a book on that very, very thing, anatomy trains for movement professionals, working title of some sort in there as well. And part of this came out of, I was doing a lot of my own workshops for years under that umbrella and pulling in people for Pilates, yoga, fitness trainers, everybody else, and taking a look at this. It made such intuitive sense to me why the bottom of the foot might have relevance up the back of the leg and up the body, and so on. And to be able to learn some of the theory and then think of where you apply it, I think that's some of the really interesting value to me, is to be able to teach it that way, to teach both the theory and then go, okay, let's play with a few simple things, play with that in different ways, but then start to take it to another level. And then go so that there's the aha moments that somebody else can go, okay, now I know how I can apply this in a different way. And, there's both pieces of me too. I'm really interested in the historical process of it, as well as what is scientifically proven and what is not. Jan Wilke, of course, has done a lot of work along these lines because he had interest too. Why are so many PTs fascinated with this work? And what has relevance and what is like, well, maybe this is a good thought process. Where could we, maybe prove that or not? And I think that's, I think Tom's even been welcome to that as well. He's totally tells people all the time that this was an idea first and then something that got studied in lab and dissected, and how do we have the relevance coming out of that? And any theories useful where it has relevance. So doing that is, I think, important. But like I said, I came out of this dance movement therapy background as well, besides yoga field for quite some time and other movement. Too, I'm a kayaker besides everything else, so there's a lot of different mixes in there. But it made such sense to me, and I've talked about this over the years, that when I worked post 9/11, this collapse in the chest, what was this protecting? Yeah, we had a lot of breathing issues that went on in New York, but it made sense to me, on a psychological sense, when we talk about superficial frontline being full of these, again, fast twitch fibers as a matter of protection for this body cavity. And I saw it in illustrations. I published an article with a client's permission, name change and everything else, around the time of right after 9/11, where she takes on that posture. And it wasn't until I started studying with Tom that it was like, well, duh, that's the superficial front line if you want to tie that languaging onto it. And that becomes an interesting another tool in my toolbox. I've studied Laban work as far as movement, dynamics and languaging. I've studied many other different types of styles of practice and styles of therapy and styles of whatever, but to have some of that to layer on top was an interesting process for me. So yeah, I brought it in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do. I that's exactly as you said it. It is a tool in the toolbox, because you've seen this as well as me, is that as that theory has grown and got bigger and bigger in the world, we do find a lot of people that hang on to it as if it's the be all and end all. And we know that that's not necessarily the case. It's one of the models that we can use to overlay. And like you said, with the individuals that you're seeing, it's like, of course, that makes complete sense. Now I can utilize that tool and bring all my other skill sets to work with that primary tool, and then other tools will start to come up as it changes.
Right. And, as you well know, superficial frontline scientifically doesn't hold up as well. There's a lot of issues with the sternalis and the laciness. We can dissect it, but it's more of a felt experience. And I think, I'm real upfront in workshops and all that I teach as well, of what what is scientifically proven and what is felt experience. And it's sometimes it's okay to go, okay, this is a more of a felt experience here. Does it have value still to think about it? Yeah. But, you know, I caution people, anybody, fascia is such a hot word right now, but, you know, I caution people all the time, anybody who thinks they know everything about it or know what it is or, you know, have the latest, everything keeps changing. Our understanding of things, of course, as time goes on, our perception of what we're doing, you know, may be looked on by people 100 years from now like, what the heck were they thinking? And you have to be open to the fact that you might be wrong. And I think the part of, you know, wisdom that comes over time, over age, over being in the field for a long time, as well as is going, I'm open to there being a possibility of something else as well, and how to do that best. You know, with my clients, I see a lot of people, especially from the yoga world. That's where, you know, I'm really have been established and known, but a lot of people come to me because of my cross work in things like dance movement therapy and therapeutics. And I'm never giving people the absolute answer. I really think of myself oftentimes as being like a trail guide. I've walked some paths. I know some little tricks. It's kind of like when I kayak guide. I have the compass, I have the gear, I have some navigation skills, and I can help people that way. I can help a technique get better. I can help see things in a different way. But ultimately, just like if I'm taking somebody on a kayak trip, they've got to do the paddling themselves. I can tow them if really need it, but you know, that's no fun. And you know, it definitely, I think with our clients too, we're trying to help people go towards the best version that they can be, with some tricks and skill set that we know along the way.
Yeah, I like the trail guide idea. I mean, it's I've said this in one of the other recordings that I've done, is that Vanda Scaravelli, who you know has been, you know, the major influence in my yoga practice and teaching, she had a saying that was it says, go with the body, not against it. Yeah. So when I really started to come into getting under the skin in terms of dissection, that's the first thing that really came back to me, was going with the body, not against it, because there's a landscape under there. And when we're working with our clients, you're allowing them to understand the nature of their landscape, their way. So I might know, yes, there's going to be these various maps, and one of them will be an anatomy train map in certain regions, and can you feel that? But the directions that you go with that is going to be completely unique to you, and not what, you know, not what everyone should be doing at the same time.
Right. I really feel that, and it's a beautiful thing to correlate dissection skill set with what we do with our clients too, because it really is that. If we fight against tissue, if we fight against, you know, where we are in a dissection, it doesn't go. I've learned when you feel it, when you read it, when you look at it and respect it. You know, oftentimes too, we talk about in the anatomy trains labs, again, the scalpel goes where movement was. So it's oftentimes along the lines of fascia and that sort of tissue. But if you find that, it's really easy going. And it's a lot like too, if I'm out on the water, I'm watching the water. I'm looking for what I see on the surface that may tell me, hey, there's, you know, some strong current over here, or there must be some rock underneath here because we're gonna get pulled around, and not to fight that, to understand it and respect it. Because, you know, I'll tell you too, in kayaking, if you try to fight against your elements that you're out there, the elements will win. The water will win. It's strong. But if you understand it, if you respect it, if you kind of work with that, there's a different level of coming into things, likewise
And
with our clients, likewise with
you
everything.
exactly, and you feel that viscerally, don't you, when you're kayaking?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is the thing, is that, you know, Tom being a sailor as well, I'm sure that the two of you, you're right on that place with it, you know, because
Yeah,
he loves the elements that way, and feels not only the boat, but he feels the water as well, and everything else in that environment. The same with you. I mean, what a beautiful way to understand that from the fluid nature, because you can look at a body then and understand how
absolutely.
their quality of fluid motion is happening.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Definitely.
That's great. You'd be an amazing body worker with hands-on skills, you know, with that understanding, really.
Another lifetime. I got to have
Yeah.
something else to. I
Yeah,
have
I
my
know, there's
hands
so
in
much.
a lot of different things, but yeah. All respect to those of you who do body work. So,
So with the fascial net plastination project then, so, you know, what interested you there? How did you, you know, how did you find that and get into that in the first place?
I think because I've been circling around that, like I said, I approached the Plastinarium. I was quoted some quote for if I wanted to try to, do a plastination fascially, that I was like, well, there's no way I'm getting a grant that high that could possibly do that. I think I heard about it first through Robert, and I put in an application and everything else, but he was like, yes, we want you as part of this project. And just, I knew from the beginning this was something I wanted to be part of. The very first phase hit one of our anatomy trains dissections, and I felt such loyalty, because I think we were, I don't know if we were 4 weeks back to back to back, and it was right before my academic semester started for teaching that semester. There was just no way to do it. But when I came into the next phase of the project, which I think was June, I think all of you guys too welcomed me in so warmly, that I was actually quite happy to feel like, I can still come into this project and come into other things. And obviously, as we went along last summer, I spent a chunk of time, dissecting, and really loved being there as part of that whole experience. And both, yourself, everybody else as part of this project, Vladimir from the Plastinarium, everybody, has been so fantastic on this project, and it's a joy. It's a joy to do some of this work. So
Yes. So your experience of the last 6 months, really, from, well, not the last 6 months, but up until we finished in December, you know, because we've been working together on the full body with our whole team, and including Rochelle Clausen as well, who's going to be interviewed at some point.
yeah, great.
Yeah, I mean, how was that for you? You know, how would you go describe that experience for you? Because it's, you know, it has been a roller coaster journey. I mean, what I've found personally is that every single day was probably one of the most creative days that I thought I would ever have. And then the next day came along and it happened all over again.
Yeah, it was exciting because we were, your roadmap for that, but we would also respect the body, as we always do with any dissection, and go, this body is lending itself to this reveal or whatever else was going on. And I love too, because oftentimes we worked 3 people together, and like there were several weeks we were, 2 of us along with Jahan, and some of that too was just very satisfying, because I actually love having that much time and space and a beautiful, respectful dissection to work on. And obviously the people that came before, the people that came after, everybody who's been part of this project have contributed so much. And that's been, I think has been really satisfying. I don't know if I answered your question whatsoever, but it's been.
No, I mean, no, because this is it. It's just understanding. I mean, we've all been so entrenched in it. You know, the passion of it, but also the intensity of the work, and then also the tiredness. you know, because
Yeah.
every aspect of it has got so much going on. So, you know, we would let go at the end of the day, wouldn't we? And all, you know, disappear off to the restaurant and, you know, gin and tonics and all that kind of stuff. We would have a great time there because we also, for the hard work that we put into that and the intense hours, we had to let go to some degree. But I don't think we've all had a chance to sit down and go, wow, you know, how was that experience for you? You know, we got through to the end of it, and that was mind blowing in itself. But for us to go through what that experience was like, being there, experiencing that, doing the work.
Yeah, and we all, I think, well, especially you know this well, you know, Rochelle was back and forth a lot. We all made a lot of sacrifices to do this project. Time away from family. We all scrambled to make ends meet to be able to come in different ways. And I know you were back and forth every weekend, usually doing a workshop in between. I did some workshops up in Berlin as well, and crazy things that were happening just to make it all work. But it was a rich, creative time, and especially I think the time period I spent the longest in Guben, you know, was summertime, very hot. We had over 100-degree Fahrenheit temperature, no air conditioning for some felt a little long time period. But it was such a rich, creative time. And, you know, some of the friendships, some of the projects that have come out of this, even this past fall, went down to Brazil to present for Johannes for, again, his Congress of Fascia, and I was presenting Anatomy Trains movement workshops that I had designed, and also participating in some other little panel dissections. And some of these sorts of networking moments, besides the social work that comes out of all of this, I think it's all of our juices really up, because we're an eclectic group that's come together for the project, but a highly creative skill set. And I don't think any of us have ever done things quite the normal way. So it's actually, that makes it interesting and entertaining too, because there is an interesting level of, you know, looking into things. And like you said, each day dissection would be different, and we knew the stakes were high. You know, we knew the stakes were high. Failure was not an option. we could not do that. But it came out, you know, I think so nicely. I mean, we'll see the final results hopefully at the next Congress. But I think it also was a rich time, you know, like I said, Plastinarium, Dr. Cheminsky, Vladimir was, you know, I think actually impressed with how we came together in this crazy group of dissection volunteers from around the world. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, you hit the nail on the head there, because all of us have done something not the usual way, you know, in our lives and the way we think. And to put all of those minds together in the room at the same time. Well, also Vladimir has that too, but he wraps it up in a very professional demeanor, because he has to, because he's running the whole environment. But all of a sudden, you know, you've seen this so many times, that little cheeky eye and the cheeky grin, and this little idea will come up. But I think he loved being around the group, working that way, and he could let his guard down in that moment. And I love that of him, but also I loved his respect for us, and Absolutely. The fact that he included himself as an equal team member in those moments. It wasn't about him being, you know, the captain of the ship or so. You know, he was part of an equal team, and that always took me aback, and was also very moving every time I saw that happen.
Absolutely.
So what have you, you know, in terms of, let's just say what we've been through with the project, because I know for me personally, now when I'm, you know, going back to teaching, every time I teach from that knowledge base, everything's changed. You know, you know, I've said this to you, we can't go into a dissection lab and think we know what we're doing. You know, that the form will always give us a slap and show us something completely different. So has it made a difference to your understanding already in teaching and the dissections you're doing from there on in?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, gosh, now I've literally done hundreds upon hundreds of dissections, because I mean, with anatomy trains, we were, now they went virtual this past time. I was not a part of that dissection. Todd was in his lab, and Tom commentary in the, from Maine. I missed it, being able to be in lab. But we were averaging last couple of years about 5 weeks a year of being teaching and assisting, and we usually have 8 cadavers, 8 forms each week, and sometimes these many two-week courses. So, and then on top of that, the years and years I spent studying with Gil, there's been now an interesting library for me, also both fixed tissue and fresh tissue, and then back to fixed with this particular form. And that's been interesting too, because it teaches you different things in that. And there was, in some ways, both, it was different because we had the luxury in some ways of time. We know we did have very tight schedules and things we wanted to accomplish and things we did accomplish in different little tight time schedules. There's a lot more time with fixed tissue, so it also gave more time in some ways for reflection, and particularly spending with this particular form. Like you, done a lot of drawing, a lot of artwork, a lot of all of that in my background. And there are particular cadavers I worked with I can visually call up, instantly. You sometimes categorize that in your mind visually. And obviously with this particular form, we spent so much time. There is so much about this particular form that I will remember for the rest of my life. So that informs things in a deep way as well. And this is interesting. I was having a little bit of a conversation with somebody the other day. I find you dissectors, this sort of artistic dissectors that a lot of us, are part of, also really plugged into life. And this is an interesting thing when you think about it, because here we deal with death and being around that. And certainly in the United States, there's a lot going on in the United States right now I could go into, but we are not used to dealing with death and dying. So that becomes a whole issue as well. I know of past generations that talk about being with a deceased loved one for a little while, or washing the body. Or Amy, my own mother, was saying, growing up in St. Louis, it was really common, and I've read about this a lot too, to picnic at the gravesite of past loved ones. You go take your picnic after whatever and be there with that. And I was thinking, wow, this is such a profound difference from what we have culturally right now. And here, obviously in New York, we've dealt with tremendous loss multiple times, most recently with COVID-19. And it's a tricky thing because we're not used to culturally dealing with unexpected death and dying. And also, how do we grieve? How do we be around it? How do we still feel alive when some of that, is part of life and death cycle? And it's tricky. But I find, and you can chime in how you want to on this, that because of that, I think we're very, very respectful to the forms that we are with. And like I said before, we know that is no longer the person there, but we're respectful to the gift that is given, which is definitely a huge gift. But I think, being with that and being okay with being around that, we're very vibrant, alive people. I don't take that for granted. I really don't.
Exactly. I think, it gives a different purpose and a different charge and a different excitement for every single day. You know, and coming back to the respect element of what we've also been doing in the lab with our form, is that the way everyone was so protective of her in that environment, you know, because it's such a profound experience, and to do her a disservice would have been, well, that's just not the way to do it. You know, it has to be done to the best. You know, it's you know, it was amazing to see, and it brings a very different feeling back into life again. But I always find when I travel back from there, I'm in a very different space, and I'm really pleased for the journey time back, because it's a good decompression. But I'm very quiet, reflecting on a lot of ideas. Also, my design brain is still working, but I'm also looking at my brain's kind of backtracking on what we did and what that will do next. But I just end up observing the world differently, and I just keep observing and people watching. When there's no judgment on that, then you're just watching and then just seeing, and you know, life is moving around us, and that's all it's doing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So what's next for Lauri Nemetz then? What's your next plans? I mean, I know, you know, life's a little different right now, but what have you got bubbling under?
Let's see. I learned to pivot to this virtual world, like many of us had to, very quickly. And especially for my university students, which, you know, I was so thankful for. I had 2 really outstanding classes this spring. And it was, I think, important that we had started in person, but then could have the time also online in a different way. I used the advantage of that too, to be able to bring them some different guests from around the world, which is one of the big advantages of this platform, that we're getting to talk here virtually right now today is along those veins. So I'm continuing with that. With teaching, you know, we don't know yet exactly what's going to happen, especially in New York come fall, and there's a lot of different scenarios. So that may change things. I'm still seeing private clients and everything else online. Classes, a teacher's practice, everything else I'm doing online. There may be more coming up that I will talk about as timing is ready, with people like my friend Leslie Kaminoff, who you've known for a long, long time. And working on this book, which, you know, will be out hopefully by, you know, the time of the next special research congress. So I'm still have a lot of those things in place. One thing I've always been so passionate about is talking about environmental space and that impact into us. So I mean, in the book, I'm continuing that dialogue and discussion. And I think even in these times is so very important to think about how we interact with the world around us and environmental space, man-made or natural. So I think that's going to continue to be something big.
But that's going to be really exciting.
Off. Yeah, and it's huge. Kayak guiding is off at the moment for the summer, you know, but I'm going to get out. I'm dusting off my kayak. It's the latest I've ever been out there on the water. But you know, it's interesting. It's a different rhythm. It's a different, you know, riding waves right now. And, you know, I think I've told you before too, I'm getting up crack of dawn. I was never a crack of dawn person. We did that in Gubin, but it was easy. The light was bright and hot. I guess it's getting that way here too. But I get up sometimes 5, whatever in the morning, and then take my almost 2-hour walk before coming back and coming into teaching and whatever else for the day. So that's grounding time for me. And there's,
that's important. So Lauri, how do people find you? You know, where do they connect with you if they need to find out what you're doing?
Well, multiple places. Facebook, I'll do all the social media ones first. Facebook, Lauri Nemetz, Lauri, and then Nemetz is N as in Nancy, E, M as in Mary, E-T-Z as in zebra. I always spell that out for people. My website's www.wellnessbridge.com. Wellness Bridge is also my Instagram that I utilize as well. If you follow me on that or request to follow me, I have a lot of pictures of nature and then some pictures of yoga and movement and anatomy mixed in there. I'm often posting on the Anatomy Trains Facebook, Anatomy Trains Dissections Facebook page. If you look up my last name, Nemetz, there'll be random articles and everything from yoga to anatomy to whatever popping up in the world. But on my website too, there's info on some of my articles and other things. I'll be putting up more soon.
Brilliant.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, that's a good place to wrap up there. So thank you, Lauri. It's been great chatting to you. And well, let's hope that we're back in the lab out in Germany once again very soon. I'm sure that's going to happen. We've got a few ideas around how we can do that next anyway. So, but we shall catch up on that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. My pleasure. And thanks for all that you've been doing. And your contribution to this project has been enormous. So it's been a pleasure to be part of this. Yeah.
Thank you.